Good evening, everybody. This is John B. from GangreneNation.com, welcoming you to a live episode, a very special live episode of the Locked On Jets podcast as we conclude this second night of the NFL draft in 2017. And this is very exciting because this is live, so if we screw this up, you're going to see us crash and burn right here. Right in front of you. Now, you can subscribe to this show on either iTunes or Audio Boom. Tonight, we are broadcasting live on Google Live, Google Hangout, Google Live via YouTube. But during our normal episodes, you can subscribe on either iTunes or Audio Boom, and this is one of the things I'm talking about because usually it takes me like 4 takes, even though I say it every day, to let you know that you can subscribe on iTunes or Audio Boom. The Jets made 2 picks tonight, and they also traded down twice. Very interesting decisions made by the team. Joining me is McGregor Wells. He writes under the name SmackDad on GangreneNation.com. McGregor, how are you this evening?
Been a long day, but I'm happy that we're doing okay in the draft. I think it didn't go too badly. So how are you, John?
I'm doing very well. I think that this is somewhat surprising. I don't think anybody really saw the Jets going with 2 safeties with their first 2 picks, and obviously it's a very controversial move for the team. I think safety is not really a very sexy position, so I think anytime you have a team with their first 2 picks, it's definitely gonna raise some eyebrows. I think it's actually a pretty good move, though, because from a couple standpoints. I think first of all, this was a weakness heading into the draft, and not only was it a weakness, you look at this Jets roster, there were not really many positions where you went into this draft saying that is a strength. And the one thing I really love when teams do in the draft is when they say, you know what, we're going to make this a strength. And so I like what the Jets did from that standpoint. And from a more practical standpoint, this team, how many games last year did we see this team suffer major breakdowns in communication where the back end of the defense falls apart and Jets give up a big touchdown? And so, I mean, I think from a practical sense, it makes a lot of sense to just revamp the safety core. It's obviously a deep safety class in this draft, and I think they picked 2 excellent players.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I have no problem with what they did. I agree they picked 2 very good players. I think Marcus May is probably not getting as much credit as he deserves. I happen to be a big fan of Marcus May. Maybe I'll be proven to be wrong, but I like what they did too. I have no problem with picking 2 safeties. Look, this is a long-term rebuilding. It's going to take a minimum of 2-3 years, and I just don't have any problem at all with getting the talent that they want back there when it's available. And it's a deep safety class. I have no problem going with 2 safeties. Just as we went with 2 tight ends, I would have no problem with that either. It's a deep tight end class. Happen to be safeties, but I got no problem with double dipping.
And I also look at the direction the NFL is heading in, and there's one team that was drafted that really kind of jumps out to me, and that's the Carolina Panthers, where they take Christian McCaffrey and then they take Samuel in the 2nd round, and you kind of wonder, what position are these guys? Are they running backs? Are they wide receivers? Now, McCaffrey's listed as a running back, but he's got receiver skills, and I think that's kind of the direction the NFL is going, where traditional position designations matter much less. What teams are going for is teams are looking for just playmakers, guys that can move around, guys that can create mismatches with. So I think a position like the safety spot maybe takes on an increased value. And I think the Jets, last year they drafted Aaron Lee. Now, we don't know what he's going to be yet. Rough rookie year, but still, you can't give up on the guy after 1 year. Now they bring in 2 safeties. It seems like the Jets are kind of trying to build their defense to combat these trends in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I agree with you that it doesn't matter what you call these players. What matters is the matchups you produce and whether those matchups are favorable or unfavorable for your team. And who cares if they call them a running back, a tight end, a wide receiver? It just doesn't matter. What matters is line them up someplace where they can take advantage of a mismatch.
And I have to think, one of the things it probably drove Todd Bowles crazy, the issues the Jets had at their safety position last year, because Bowles was a safety when he's a player. So you can just imagine how that must have just drove him crazy. That the position he played was one of the weak spots on his team. And when I look at these players, one thing that kind of sticks out is I think these guys are both pretty well rounded, and Bowles has talked about that. And I get the sense that people think in the NFL that you have one guy who plays a deep safety, another guy plays more in the box, and that's their role. And that's not necessarily true of every team. I think what the Jets like to do is the Jets like to kind of flip where their safeties go. They like their safeties to be able to handle a little bit of everything. And you add two guys like this. This is something I actually said yesterday before I had any idea the Jets were going to take a safety in the second round after Jamal Adams, but you kind of can drive an offense crazy if you don't know where these two athletic guys, where you don't know where they're going to line up on each snap, where they could be doing one of any number of things, because just due to the versatility of the assignments at the safety position. And I think that these guys fit what the Jets want to do, what Bowles wants to do on defense.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. With this caveat that we're not quite sure how long Bowles is going to be with the team. So drafting to fit like a glove the kind of players Bowles wants may not end up being a great move. Of course, you can't ignore what he wants. He's still the coach, but if he's not the coach next year, that may turn out to be a poor move.
Well, I mean, you can't draft. I mean, you have to draft for who the coach is. I mean, you can't draft on the assumption a guy's going to be fired. And what the heck would the Jets be doing if they're saying, "Well, we're firing this coach in a year, so let's throw him out"? But I mean, I think these guys are both well-rounded enough that they're going to fit in well in any system. But I would like to move on, because I think it's pretty clear from these moves that there's one guy who might be on his way out of town. Do you want to take a wild guess as to who that is?
Uh, Pryor, it's Pryor. He's gone, I think.
Yeah, and Pryor's a guy who it kind of jumps off the page to me, because when I hear people talk about his play, and particularly when they talk about some of the reasons he's struggled, I hear a lot of, he's not put in the right position. The coaching staff is kind of failing him. And when I hear that, first of all, I think about what Bowles wants, and I think I do get the feeling Bowles wants safeties who can do it all, because he wants versatility, because it puts more on the table in terms of scheme. But when I look at Pryor, and he's a young guy, and I understand that people argue he's a young guy and he still could have room to grow, he could have room to improve. But when you talk about Pryor as a guy who's struggling because he's put in the wrong spot, and one of the big complaints is when he's forced to play the deep zone, deep center field. And I'm saying, you can't really get on the team for not playing him in that spot, because if you have a safety who can't play that back there, that's a big problem for that position. And I look at the NFL where there are guys who really are driving forces on your team, and there are guys you have to hide. And you may say that you have to put Pryor in a position to succeed, and that's true of every player. But how limited he is, where you talk about you can't play him deep, but you also don't want him to get isolated one-on-one in coverage, and it's almost like he's a guy you have to hide. And yeah, I guess he could be a good enough player as like the seventh, eighth best guy on your defense. Yeah, if he's a guy. I don't know that Pryor, if as I mentioned, I think if Pryor's like the seventh or eighth best guy on your defense, it's one thing. But Well, we have. I was talking about Calvin Pryor. I was mentioning Pryor. Or- Well, this is. I think we have crashed and burned. I think this is the danger of doing the live show. Okay, so anyway, I was talking about Pryor, and one of the things I was mentioning is that I think when you have a guy that limited, it's really tough on your team. And yeah, I guess you can live with him, but is he a guy who really is a driving force behind your strategy? Is he a guy you really can't afford to replace?
He may thrive in a different, but I don't think he fits what Bowles wants to do at all. And I think it's time for him to go.
Yeah. So the Jets, then I think Pryor is probably on the way out. Another one of the criticisms you hear of the Jets is that they didn't fix this. They didn't fix things on the offensive side of the ball. They haven't addressed their needs at cornerback. And the way I look at this is the team is just. It was always going to be a struggle in 2017, no matter what. I mean, when you look at this team, it's probably going to be a rough year. It's probably going to be a lean year. There's just not a lot of talent on this roster. So you almost have to look at this as you're building a foundation for the future. And the positions you fill are not really as important as just the fact that you're adding quality players, because no matter what you do, you're going to end up with weak spots on the roster.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much starting from scratch. I mean, not only is Calvin Pryor probably gone, it seems like they've given up on Gilchrist as well. It may be his injury is not something he's not going to be able to come back from. I mean, all across this roster at this point it's just one really young player after another filling important positions. And when you're just not going to have a lot of success in 2017, yeah, and I think the important thing is to build some building blocks, some foundational pieces for the future, and that's what they're trying to do this year.
Do you think? I actually kind of feel like Gilchrist might be a guy who sticks around just to have a veteran presence, because I do think it's going to be tough to start two rookie safeties. Safety is such an involved position; you have to know so much. And the Jets seems like they run a fairly complicated defense, and at that position, you really have to know where everybody is. So I actually wonder whether this makes it more likely Gilchrist stays. Do you want to just stick with two rookies?
I wouldn't suffer the growing pains, but I absolutely agree with you that there's going to be growing pains. And when you have two rookies back there, there's going to be, I mean, we had miscommunication problems last year. They may be even worse this year if you're starting two rookies. But yeah, I wonder if Gilchrist is so badly hurt that we're just not going to really see him again. The people have wondered why he's still on the roster, and I wonder if it's simply because he's just not ready to come back in. You can't really cut him until he is.
Now, I think one of the things that encourages me from this is, this was not a very sexy move to go with two early safeties, but all offseason I've been searching for some sort of sign that there's a direction for that this front office wants to go, and I've been very disappointed. I was very disappointed with some of the moves they made in free agency, because I didn't think that they were great value. But one of the things that I like seeing is that it seems like there was a strategy in place that they were going to improve the safety position. They view it as an important spot. So that's one of the things that kind of heartens me through through the early days of this draft.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems like they have a plan, and they don't really care whether the fans like the plan or not, which is a good thing. They're exercising their own judgment, and it was never going to be a popular move to double down on safety. And I kind of like that they don't care whether it's a popular move or not. They think it's the right move for the team. Now, It may turn out not to be the right move. These may not be the right players, but at least it seems like they do have a very, very clear vision of what they're trying to do with the back end of their defense, and they're doing it regardless of the criticism.
Yeah, and I think that it seems to me like this is the type of move where they're not really swinging for the fences. They're looking for more foundational parts, whereas which kind of suggests to me that maybe Mike Maccagnan feels like he's got more than a year to build this thing, and who knows whether he does or not. It's always a guessing game. But you like to see that. What I like to see here is that the Jets aren't just going all in trying to win, because it would be fruitless to try and win. They're swinging for the fences. They're making moves that they think will be solid moves. Again, maybe it doesn't pan out, but you at least like to see that there's a vision behind this next year, because this next year is probably going to be lean for this franchise.
Yeah, Mike Maccagnan seems to be operating as if he feels like he's got a whole lot of job security now. Whether it does or not, who knows? But he definitely is. I mean, he's not panicking and trying to find a real quarterback unless he thinks Hackenberg is going to be the answer. He didn't, reach for a quarterback in this draft. He didn't go out and sign or try to make a blockbuster trade for a quarterback from another team. He seems to be methodically trying to build a very young team from scratch, and we'll see whether he's capable of doing that. But he seems to be operating from a position of strength as far as he seems to view it, because I don't think he has any indications that he's feeling the heat.
And another sign of that might be the moves the Jets made in the third round, where, first of all, they trade down twice in the third round. They trade down from 70 to 79 and pick up a fifth-round pick in the process from Minnesota. And I was very pleased to see that. And again, this is not a move that's going to generate a ton of buzz, but they really did not move it down that far from, still a lot of good players available. You're only dropping down 9 slots in the third round. And I think the third round is a good spot to do it. I was not wild about the idea of them moving down a whole lot in the first round, just because I felt like you move out of 6, you lose your chance to add a premium player like an Adams, like the guy they drafted. Even the second round, there are lots of great players available. You get to the third round, your odds of hitting aren't as high, and really, I think in many instances it comes down to more volume, where you have a better shot. What gives you a better chance of hitting on a player? Is it the 70th pick, or is it the 79th pick plus a fifth-round pick? I think giving yourself that second shot without moving down that far increases your chances of finding a good player.
Oh, no doubt about it. I was happy to see both move down moves. Actually, I would have preferred they move down from the number 2 pick. The second round pick, because I think the strength of this draft is between rounds 2 and 4. I think there's a lot of good players in those areas. We picked up a 5th and a 6th, so I'm not sure there's a lot of strength left when we get to those areas. But yeah, I would have preferred they moved down from the number 2 pick. But as long as they moved down and got extra picks, I was happy.
Yeah, I think that the other aspect of that is this team just needs players, and this is a team where if they move down, if this team ends up with trading down even more, and this ends up being a double-digit player class. I mean, when you look at the state of this roster, there are a lot of guys who are, even if they're late-round picks, who are going to have a chance to make this team.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of fringe players in this team that were playing last year that shouldn't feel very comfortable after this draft, I think. Like Jalen Marshall. I think he's going to have a problem if Ardarius Stewart turns out to be a player.
Well, that brings us to the one player the Jets did pick in the third round. They entered tonight with 2 third-round picks. They only made 1 pick because of their second trade down. They had the last pick of the third round, but they traded out of that pick. With their 1 pick tonight, they pick Ardarius Stewart, the wide receiver out of Alabama. And I will tell you, I loved the pick of Jamal Adams, and I loved May in the second round. This one, I don't hate it. I'm not sure I'm sold that Stewart was really that great of a pick in the third. I don't hate it. I do see, I think he's got the skill set to be a solid receiver in the West Coast offense. I think he's got a little playmaking ability. I think he's got a good, balls that aren't necessarily thrown on target, good reaching balls that are maybe a little bit away from where they should be. So, and he's got some return experience. So I think there are some things to like there. There are other guys I liked a little bit better. I think the thing about him is I think he's kind of a tough guy to judge because that Alabama offense he played in was really it was a pop gun passing attack because they had that true freshman quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and they had so much talent, NFL talent on defense that literally the only way that team could lose most of its games was the offense giving plays away. So they ran a very safe offense, and there were just a lot of dump offs to Stewart. So I think that kind of complicates the evaluation of him.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very difficult to evaluate a player when he's got that kind of a quarterback and that kind of an offense. But, I see a little bit of Laveranues Coles in this guy, and I'm with you. It wasn't my first choice. It wasn't my second choice. I could have picked up, 5 to 10 players right off the top of my head that I would have rather had than Ardarius Stewart, but I don't think it was a terrible pick. I didn't look at it like, what are they thinking with this thing? Like when they picked William Campbell in the 6th round a few years ago, or when they picked Jalen Saunders in the 4th round. It wasn't a head scratcher. It's just there were players I like better. But I think this is not a bad pick. It's just not what I would have done.
Yeah, and of the 5 major moves the Jets have made in this draft, you have 3 picks, 2 trade downs. I've absolutely loved 4 of the 5. The 2 trade downs I've been saying this for months that the Jets need to trade down, and I think they've picked 2 excellent players at the top. This is the only one I didn't love, but I didn't hate it, and I think that's a win because usually by the end of the 2nd round, there's one thing they've done that I absolutely hate, whether it's last year with Hackenberg or Dexter McDougal in 2013. There's usually one move where I'm just like, what the heck are you doing? And even this was not that bad. I think, I don't know how high, but I could see him being a decent player.
Being a decent player too. In fact, I think he's got an upside of more than just decent. I think he can be a really good receiver. I'm not saying he will be. It's hard to judge him by what he did at Alabama, but I think that there's some raw materials to work with there. That I love his ability to adjust in the air on a catch. I love his toughness. I think there's some things to work with there that he might actually have an upside of better than just decent player.
So looking forward to have your eyes on.
I'm sorry, John. I'm losing you, but you're asking if I have anybody I'm looking for the next round. Is that right?
What prospects are you really interested in heading into the 3rd day?
I've been a big tight end guy this year because I think this is a historically really great class of tight ends, and so I would look at a guy like Bucky Hodges. Who's an athletic freak at tight end. He's got a lot of development to do, I think, but he'd be an interesting pick. Of course, from the site that I've been pushing George Kittle for a long time. Kittle's a real, classic inline tight end prospect. I would love to have somebody like him. Who else? Those are my 2 biggest wants in the coming round. I think it'd be nice if we got one of those 2 guys.
So then I can say the great Chris Berman get boom. So New York becomes tight end.
Exactly. How about you?
Well, that's I was actually going to use the paraphrase Craig Kilborn tonight and say he's not your Darius, he's not my Darius, he's our Darius.
Who are you looking for in the next round?
Just want the Jet. There's no there that I got my. You're kind of throwing a dart at the board, so I think any guy I say would be conjecture because pretty much anybody who's made it to this point. Let's be honest, the odds are probably against them. So I'm going to cop out and not give you an answer on that.
Okay, so let me give you a name. Marlon Mack. I want to get Marlon Mack. He's still on the board, right?
So we'll conclude by giving out some other teams in the draft. Is there anybody whose draft really sticks out to you?
Well, Cleveland, I thought, was doing some really nice things in the draft. But of course, they have this enormous draft capital, so They can afford to make a few mistakes as well. But I think that Cleveland may finally be not a laughing stock of the league in another year or two. They did some really nice things in this draft, I thought.
Yeah, the team that really kind of jumps out to me is Seattle, just based on what I saw last night, where I kept, they're going to take an offensive lineman, and then and it kind of made sense because the offensive lineman kept falling, and then today they take Lee Dowell, which was because from the standpoint is this is probably the player I have less of an idea about than anybody in the class, because I nothing would surprise me with the guy. If 4 years from now he's made multiple Pro Bowls, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Seattle did take a lineman later on, but this is just, no matter where he went, to be intrigued. He has such talent, but he has so much marks.
Seattle's been not really that great at drafting, other than those two drafts that put them in position of Super Bowl contenders for several years ago. I mean, so they've whiffed on a lot of high picks in the last few drafts. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys pan out. I think the coronation of that front office of some sort of whizzes that understood things about the draft that other teams didn't, and maybe premature. I think they did a really incredible job for two drafts a while ago, and since then I think the drafting has been pretty spotty. So we'll see how these picks work out this year and see if they can reverse that a little
bit. Saying they'd only hit on two drafts, I mean that's all you need.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a while now since they really hit though.
All right. So, any final thoughts before we tell everybody good night?
Marlon Mack. Let's get Marlon Mack. I want a new running back. We're getting old at the running back position, so I'd like to see a new running back. That's my final thought.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Keep up good work.
Good night.
All right, and thank you for tuning in, everybody. This has been, we've seen some of the perils of doing this live. It's like I told you at the start. This was you're always walking the high wire act. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And this podcast called the Locked On Jets podcast. If you're new to it, subscribe to it or iTunes or Audio Boom. I hope you have a great night, everybody. We'll see you again. Draft. Great.